It's good.
Great morning to lock myself out of.
Oh man.
Okay. We'll give it about another 30 seconds before we get started.
All right.
Okay. Okay. So if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. If you've been with us before, welcome back. I'd like to give special thanks to Bastille Radisic, whose efforts made this conversation possible. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A portal, and we'll get to them as time allows. So, right, let's begin. Excuse me. Hello, and welcome to FilmSlam Stream's post-film conversation for Concerto is a Conversation. My name is Eric Siler, and I'm a professor of film, media arts, and communications, as well as moderator for this conversation. We are pleased to be joined by the director and the subject of A Concerto is a Conversation, Ben Proudfoot. He's the director. He's the creative force behind Breakwater Studios, an award-winning film production company. He has produced and directed over 50 noteworthy short documentaries for the world's most admired brands such as Charles Schwab and the New York Times. Also, we have joining us is Kris Bowers. He is one of the main subjects in the film. He's a Grammy-nominated and Emmy Award-winning and Juilliard-educated pianist and composer as well. So he's joining us, and Ben Proudfoot are both joining us today. Welcome to the both of you.
Thank you, Eric. I just have to make one little correction, and that's Kris and I are co-directors of the film, and Kris wrote all the music for the film as well.
Well, thank you for that clarification. I thought that was the case, but I'm glad you're giving Kris his
No problem. Yeah.
With that. So whose idea was it? Kris, did you come up with this idea, or did your grandfather just say, look, you got to tell a story about my life before it's too late? How did this come about?
No, yeah, it was really a pretty fortuitous and kismet moment. Basically, Ben originally was reached out to by the LA Phil to make a short documentary that looked at the intersection between music and Los Angeles. And so he reached out to me because he saw I was working on this violin concerto that would be premiered at Disney Hall, and that I'm from here, and thought it might be an interesting thing to look at a film composer coming into the concert space. And it just so happened that the day that we met, I was coming from an event recognizing my grandfather, where they named the block that he owns in South LA, the Bowers Retail Square. And in that conversation, when Ben and I were talking, I think a combination of me being a little overdressed and also, having that whole experience front of mind, as we were talking, I pretty early on in our conversation was like, actually, you should hear my grandfather's story. That's a much more interesting story, and talked about how he hitchhiked from Florida and ended up in LA, and then, didn't have anything. And a couple of years later had this business, and immediately Ben, being the sharp documentarian filmmaker he is, he was like, wait, that's actually a much more interesting story. How can we combine these things, or how can we pivot a bit here? And, would you be open to interviewing your grandfather? And then that opened up his mind to thinking of how he could use this double interrotron system and have this conversation between the two of us. And it was in that first meeting that we started to talk about shifting it to being more of a tribute to my grandfather and his story. And I think for me, as soon as that was the direction we're going in, I actually felt much more comfortable and excited about it, because that just felt like a story that I could really get behind and would love to have a hand in creating.
Oh, good. So Ben, as Kris helped you shape this story, what was your response to it? What did you lend to the story itself?
Yeah, so, as a documentary filmmaker, your job is mostly listening and trying to listen for what the best story is, and be willing to kind of throw out your plans in order to capture the truth, what's going on. And so that's kind of my job generally, as like a facilitator of sorts, and bringing what sort of craft and process I can to the table. You know, normally my big contribution would be the interview, where I sit down and interview somebody for a number of hours. And Kris did that so well, and obviously on camera as well, which was a unique part of this film. And you know, there was a lot of editing that needed to be done. You know, when you make a documentary, you have, you know, and I think we had probably 20 or 30 hours of footage, and we need to boil it down to 13 minutes. So I tried to do some heavy lifting in the editorial part of things, but our editor, Lucas Dong, did an incredible job there. And I think probably one of the most beautiful moments was working with Kris to put the music in the film, because the film is very, very driven by music. We have Kris's concerto that you can hear. You have the score, which Kris wrote. And then you also have diegetic, you know, piano and other music that you're seeing happening on screen in the rehearsal, et cetera. So that was hard. You know, it's challenging to work with all those different elements in the soundtrack. And it was amazing to hear Kris's music for the first time and see that all be layered in.
Right. Just to bring it all together was phenomenal. Going back to you, Kris, what was your grandfather's reaction? You and Ben concocted this story, but your grandfather had to be involved with it. Well, was he on board with it? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, he was definitely on board with it. I mean, it's interesting that, you know, my family has had a few moments of wanting to capture elements of our family story and like interviewing some of the elders in our family. I mean, we I think this year's our family's 107th reunion, and we can go all the way back to like the first slave that was sold in our family, and that history is really important. So I think he was happy to talk about it, and the process of filming it. I think this was definitely a bigger production than he was used to. I feel like usually we have like a little camcorder or something that we're capturing them on, or a cell phone, and now this was a much bigger thing, and so he wasn't really sure what it would be in the end. And so when he finally saw it, I think he was just overwhelmed and surprised, and you know, he got emotional the first time he watched the first cut of the film that I shared with him, which is not my grandfather's usual reaction to things. And since then, I think every now and then he'll say like, you know, you and Ben were over here, and I was like, I don't know what they're doing, but I guess we'll see what happens. And I could never even have dreamed that it would have been like this. I could never even imagine that this is what you guys were doing. And you know, I think all of us are surprised by how this has like grown and kind of snowballed. But yeah, he just feels a bit speechless and thankful, which I think is also a bit ironic given that it's about him and it's his story. So I mean, it really couldn't be anything without him. Yeah.
It couldn't. Well, how is he doing? Tell us how he is.
He's good. He's you know, he's such a like fierce spirit. He swears he's gonna live until he's like 125 or 130, and you know, I feel like even with some of his health challenges, like he just started radiation for some of his cancer treatment and things like that. And yeah, I think that's difficult, but at the same time, he's still very lucid and very active. And also, you know, I think this whole process has been really helpful for him in a way where, like, you know, he was one of these elders that had to be talked to when the lockdown first started about not going outside, because he was like, you're not going to keep me inside. Like, I'm going to still go do what I have to do and go to the store. And being in the house without anything to do for, you know, a year has definitely been really difficult for him. And you can see how that's affecting him mentally and you know, socially and all that kind of stuff. And so now having this to focus on with like the interviews or even just conversations about it, I find that every time I call him to even just check in on how he's doing health-wise, he's like, I'm fine. What do you need from me? Do you need me to be somewhere? Do you need another phone call or interview or something? So I think this has been like a real treat for him. It's something that he can actually look forward to and be excited about.
Well, great, great. Well, we wish him well. Oh,
Yeah.
great. Now, over to you, Ben. Let's talk a little bit about the production process, the design of it. Can you tell us how the film changed from inception to the final cut? Did it? I know you had an idea of what you wanted it to look like, but as you started shooting and the music was coming together and getting footage and so forth, it's definitely changed. So talk to us a little bit about that process.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is a relatively unique process in that Kris and I, in that very first meeting, somebody said, you know, it's going to be a story about your family's lineage from slavery to the Walt Disney Concert Hall. That was our kind of North Star. And we knew that if we had done a good job in rooting the story in his family story, that we could end the movie. We should be able to end the movie on the shot of Kris's grandfather passing the suit to Kris, because that's basically what the movie is about, right? The passing of you know, wisdom, of resources, of you know, the fruits of sacrifice. And so we kind of knew that those were kind of our two North Stars. And when you kind of lock in on that, then everything just becomes subordinate to that idea. And the editorial process is just about getting it as close to that as possible and not stopping until it's where you want to be, and not allowing anything to be in the movie that isn't subordinate to that overall idea, that doesn't support that idea. And so in terms of design, whether it's in editing or music or color correction or sound design, that's the question you're always asking yourself, is does this support my overall thesis, basically? Because in many ways, short form documentary is very similar to like an essay, a written essay. You have a question that you're trying to dig into, and slowly over the course of the film, you're answering it in a surprising way with a satisfying but unexpected conclusion. And the question of this film was, you know, what's Mr. Bowers Sr. going to say to, you know, give Kris advice as he's feeling this imposter syndrome as a Black composer in Hollywood and in these classically white spaces of the concert hall. And so that was our sort of narrative North Star that we just held everything up to. And with enough time, you kind of get closer and closer.
All right, very, very good. I just like to let everyone know we are talking to the directors of CONCERTO is a Conversation, Kris Bowers and Ben Proudfoot. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A portal. We'll get to them as time allows. Kris, we got a sense of your grandfather's personality, but can you give us a more intimate look at his personality? I mean, he was pretty bold, hitchhiking all the way to California, you know, stopping in the Midwest. It's too cold for him, and trying to, you know, get in a creative way, using a creative method to get a job and to stay in LA. He definitely wasn't taking that midnight train back to Georgia. So tell us a little bit about his personality.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting to look at him now at 92 and look at this very like sweet man that also still has this like grit and determination that he's had since he was a boy. I mean, like hearing stories about him growing up on this farm in a town that literally just had a stop sign, not even stop light. He often talks about like, you know, feuds with the neighboring farm where like they're trying to move their property line and you have to like, you know, at some point go over there with like shotguns to like show them that like you're not gonna move this line anymore. Like that type of environment and like kind of you know, having to really stand up for yourself, I think is the space that he came from. And so like getting to a place like Los Angeles or getting into business and things like that, he's always had that mindset of like, I have to figure out how to take care of myself and take care of my family and do whatever I need to do in order to do that. And it's given him this like mental fortitude where the idea of doubting himself, the idea of stopping or any of that is just not in his DNA, which is pretty fascinating. I mean, like my whole life, he was the kind of person that would always do everything himself. Like their house, I think, has a few different renovations that they did over the course of decades, like some before I was born, some after I was born. And my grandfather, I think, did all of those himself, or like any sort of physical activity or like manual labor that they needed to do. He would always say like, oh, I can do that. We're not going to pay somebody else to do that. Like I'll figure it out. And that mentality of like, I'll just figure out how to do it, I think is something that permeates through the rest of my family in a really beautiful way, where my grandfather's thought process is like, if you give me enough time to figure something out and a little bit of resources to you know, give myself some sort of education in that space, then like I'll figure out how to do anything. And I feel like he's always been that way. Yeah.
Right, and then he's passed that on to you and to a lot of people who watch this documentary.
Yeah.
And Ben, don't be shy here. This film has received accolades, so talk to us a little bit about it. And also, I see Ava DuVernay was like an executive producer on it. So talk to us about all this that the film has done. Please don't be shy and let us know.
Yeah, both Kris and I have a hard time talking about this stuff. So yeah, the film has definitely been appreciated. We premiered the film as a New York Times op doc in November. We were thrilled to have its festival premiere at Sundance, which was a historic virtual Sundance, a beautiful thing, how they pulled that together in such a difficult time. We obviously have been very excited about the Academy recognizing the film with a nomination for Best Documentary Short Subject, and all kinds of wonderful festivals, including your own, selecting and pulling the film in, which has just been wonderful, because our greatest dream possible would be for as many people to see it as we possibly can. At the same time, I think both Kris and I would agree that we think it's a good film, but Horace's story is a great story. And we think that that's the beautiful thing that people are responding to. We always say that whatever spirit carried Horace across the country is what's leading this film now. So we're along for the ride.
So who gets to go to the Academy Awards coming up? Do both of you get to go?
Yeah, we're going.
Yeah, we'll both be there.
Arm in arm.
Well, good luck. Good luck. What about your grandfather? Is he going to be able to go? Is he going to be on this?
Yeah, we're not so sure. In the beginning, it's interesting. When we first got nominated, he was like, "Oh, no way, I'm going. I can't do anything." And also, I think it's the COVID aspect, and my grandparents are still a little hesitant to even like leave the house, to be honest. But we were trying to figure out if he can go. There's just so many, with it being you know, COVID this year affecting the way that the Oscars are going to be. It's going to be a lot of like protocol and a lot of like moving around, and it's going to be an even longer event than it usually is. And so a lot of things that you know, at 92 years old doesn't seem so attractive, even if it is the Oscars. So we're going to see what we can do, but you know, nonetheless, we'll definitely make sure that he feels like he's celebrating the night. That's for sure.
Exactly. Maybe lay out a red carpet for him at home if he can't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the idea. Yeah.
Well, great. Okay. So what's next for you, Kris? Well, what are you working on now? Are you working on your music now? Are you looking to do more in terms of film? Can you tell us what's next for you, Kris?
Yeah, a bit of both. So right now I'm working score-wise on a few projects, primarily a new film about Venus and Serena Williams' father. And then when they were kids, it's called King Richard, and Will Smith plays their dad. And that's a film that I'm just starting. I just finished the latest Space Jam movie, which comes out in July, which I'm really excited about, with LeBron. And then some other TV things. But yeah, and then as far as like outside of composing, you know, Ben and I are trying to figure out how we can what we can do next with this film or with this idea, or continuing to try to tell more stories like this.
Well, great. And what about you, Ben? What's next on the horizon for you?
I just can't wait for Space Jam to come out.
It's been like years.
I want to see it. I'm in the short documentary space mostly. So like Kris said, we're working on seeing, we really fell in love with this idea of this grandparent-grandchild conversation and what we can do with that. But we make a lot of short documentaries here at our company, Breakwater Studios. And so we work a lot with the New York Times. We have a series there called Almost Famous. We're about to release a whole series of new films in that series. I'm looking forward to the world opening up again as a documentary filmmaker, traveling and getting out there with the camera.
Well, we look forward to the work from the both of you. Well, this has been such an enjoyable and pleasurable conversation. Thank you both so much for taking time out to share with us, some insights on this wonderful film, and good luck with the upcoming Academy Awards.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Eric.
Yeah.
And thank you to our audience for joining us for this important and invigorating conversation. For more information about the current 45th Cleveland International Film Festival or any of our upcoming film festivals, please continue to follow us on social media or visit us at clevelandfilm.org. I'm Eric Siler. Thank you.